On social media, the line between an opinion and an expert opinion is quite blurry. Just because you've ridden a certain amount of distance or have a certain number of followers does not make you an expert. Some of us try to stay in the lane of sharing experience, but there are several who sort of venture into the territory of expertise. Today, I have the opportunity to bring you the voice of a genuine expert, Mr. V. Sivaramakrishnan, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Eurogrip Tyres. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I think this today's session, TED Talks here, it's been very insightful, and it got me thinking about the fact that not many of us motorcyclists get the opportunity to get this kind of information about how tires are made, and the R&D and the effort that goes into creating the products that we use and enjoy. And since we had the opportunity to speak to you, I wanted to bring that to my audience. So I'd love to talk to you about tire technology. And I think we can start by just looking at this aspect of what goes into the development of a product. Right? As consumers, we have very little knowledge about it. So if you could just give us some insights on that.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for your time and traveling all the way to spend this day with us at the test tracks and testing our products and having a experience of our products. As you rightly said, tire is the most critical piece in an automobile because that's the one which comes into the contact with the road, and the entire driving dynamics of a vehicle is defined by those two contact patches, which is probably a size of half a postcard or such a small strip of a footprint which defines the entire riding dynamics of a bike. When it comes to development of a tire, it starts off with a requirements book, where we try and understand what the market wants, what our consumers are expecting out of the product in terms of wear, durability, in terms of handling characteristics, in terms of precision, in terms of wet grip, in terms of dry grip. What is the requirement of the market? What is the requirement of the segment? And from there on, then the program starts. We fundamentally bucket tire technology into four main technological buckets, right? So one is the compound technology, which forms a very interesting and important piece, and this in a way defines many of the riding characteristics performances, especially when it comes to rolling resistance, fuel efficiency, when it comes to wet grip, dry grip, and wear. These are the main performances which the compound has an important role to play, and it's a very critical piece. So whenever we do a new product line development, we put a lot of emphasis on developing the right compound, and it goes through various stages of developmental phase. It's even sometimes I think that it is even more stringent than a pharmaceutical formulation development, because it has to go through so many iterative processes to perfect the compound recipe.
Correct. You start, that's like the basic unit on which the entire thing is built. Basic unit
on which you build the product line, and you get those compounds at the lab level and then get onto a production phase. Then you do it on the prototypes. Then on the prototypes, it goes through many iterations till it gets perfected. So one of the most important pieces is the compounding technology, the compounds which we put on the product lines. The second most important is the profile.
Okay.
As you know, the front and the rear tires are different sizes and dimensions, and we talked about in today's masterclass driving dynamics sessions how important is the linearity of the bike and how tire plays an important role in making the bike linear. So the fall down, the stand up motions, so when you are throttling on a curve, how the profile of the front and the rear are working in tandem is important, because when you are in the corner, you may find that the rear is able to take a little more corner, but the front is giving away, or vice versa. So it's important to strike the right balance, and hence the profile design goes through series of iterative process of finite element methods we use simulation techniques using high-end computer systems to simulate the performance of the bike using vehicle models. That's the second piece of the bucket. The third one is the tread pattern itself.
Yes.
Now, tread pattern has many elements to it. Some of the elements which we optimize using the tread pattern design is how do we channelize the water flow? How do we ensure there is no aquaplaning on the surface, at the center when it is in contact, when you are on a straight patch on a thin road, how the water layer is broken and you are able to dig into the surface of the road and get that grip. So the wet grip aspect of it, then the block stiffness, how at every contact the stiffness is same, otherwise you are kind of hip hopping and you can land into a issue where you are not getting the riding comfort. So especially this is very critical in block patterns. Then we come into the durability of the tread pattern itself. When I talk about durability of the tread pattern, we talk about uneven wear, the wear picture. It has to be smooth, it has to be forgiving, in the sense we all know as the bike gets older, consumers find it difficult to maintain the suspensions, maintain the shocker stiffnesses, the alignments, even a simple thing like your chain, right? It's elongated a little bit, and you can have, when you're refitting the tire, you can have an oblique fitting. So how can we make the tread pattern forgiving enough that it takes care of these irregularities, which is normal in a day-to-day life. The life is not perfect, right? So how well the tire is constructed and how well the tread pattern is designed makes an important aspect to give that overall good ride through the entire life of the vehicle and the tire. And the fourth and the most important is the construction, the reinforcements which goes into the tire. So as you know, tire is a composite which has got rubber, which has got nylon, polyester, steel. So there are many reinforcing layers which go into the tire, and as engineers we look at it as a pressure vessel. So it has to take the load, and it has to take the air pressure, and it has to do it consistently for million cycles of rotation, right? So these calculations, the safety factors, the importance of how the reinforcements are in terms of long life, durability and stiffness. Because if you make too stiff a tire, then you have other handling characteristics which makes an impact. So you need to strike a balance between the durability of the tire, the stiffness of the tire. Of course, safety becomes a paramount importance. So without zero compromise on the safety, how do you strike the right balance between making the reinforcements in such a way that it is very durable and it gives you a fantastic riding performance? These are the elements which a tire development goes through. When we do a development, so we start with the requirements book, and then we move on to do the protos, like the compound development, the target profiles, tread pattern candidates, construction candidates. So when I say candidates, we mean that they are options. We pick one at the end. But the tread compound is more or less what I can say is like pinned at the beginning of the development
so you need
program.
to have something that's fixed and some variables.
Some variables. So we fix the tread compound, and then we have candidates on the tread pattern and the construction. The compounds and the profiles are anchored, and the tread pattern and the construction are candidates. And we generally start with 2 or 3 tread pattern candidates and 4 or 5 construction candidates, and in that combination, we land up as high as 16 candidates and as low as 5 candidates.
So basically, every tire that comes out, you've probably made 5 or 16 versions of a product and chosen from that, apart from all of the other R&D that goes on.
And then it goes through a funnel program wherein we funnel the performances. Like as I said, we test them in India,
Yeah.
we test them in Europe, we test them in Japan. So
Yes.
these are the three continents, countries where we test them in different. And when we also test them, India is like summer.
Yes.
Japan is humid and winter,
Yeah.
right? So there is snow and things like that. And in Europe, it's summer and winter,
Yeah.
and very harsh winters. So we test them in all these conditions
Yeah.
for drivability, which has a host of about 16 to 18 parameters which are evaluated: wet grip, dry grip, durability, pattern durability, life. All these parameters are evaluated in these candidates, and we funnel it. Every funnel we eliminate some,
Eliminate a few, yeah.
and we come to the last 2 or 3 best candidates.
Right.
And then we do, in fact, what we do is a reconfirmatory test on these candidates,
Yeah.
back to back with the reference tires. We do a reconfirmatory test, and then we do the product line release.
In that one answer, you've taken us through, I don't know how many months. How long does something like that take?
We divide our product development program into 3 types of product development.
Okay.
One is called the head size development of a line.
Yeah.
Like you have the Roadhound
Yes.
line, which is a sport touring line.
Great.
You have the Pro Torque Extreme line, which is the sport line. So you have the Climber line, which is an on-off tire. So each one is called a product line.
Correct.
A product line typically will have about anywhere between 10 to 20, sometimes even 50 sizes. The B-Connect scooter line has 50 sizes. Globally, it's a large product line. So typically it's about 10 to 20, and each product line will have head sizes.
Right.
These head sizes are most performing demanding sizes.
Correct.
That means they go on the most demanding bikes, and the size itself will be very complicated.
Yes.
An example in Roadhound is the 120 70 R17 in the front and the 180 55 R17 in the rear.
Yeah.
That's a typical head size
Okay.
to look for. The second example which I can give is, there is a scooter tire which is having a 16-inch radial construction.
Okay.
0-degree radial construction in Europe, right? That's again a typical head size which you will look. So head sizes which are fundamentally performance demanding.
Yes.
And very complicated.
Okay.
That's an head size. And head size development can be anywhere in the range of 2 to 2.5 years.
Okay.
It can sometimes stretch to 3 years of development, because you need to do the compound development, you need to have the construction platform developed, you need to have the profile concepts finalized, and also you need to do the tread pattern development. So all technologies are developed on a head size.
Right.
Every technology is developed. Then we have something called the line extensions. The line extensions are simply application of these technologies into different sizes. These are pretty straightforward. It can be in the range of 9 months to 12 months.
Right.
Somewhere in between these two extremes is called a critical line extension.
Okay.
Critical line extensions are those which are either a market sensitive product or a bike sensitive product. Like for example, in the scooter, you would have seen in Europe there are twin front tires.
Yes, of course.
Right? Now that's a critical line extension, because the dynamics are very different there.
Correct.
And hence you need to do somewhere in the development efforts are somewhere in between a head size development and a line extension. It's not as simple as a line extension is, but it's not as complicated as a head size development is.
Eurogrip across the product portfolio, there are some interesting tread patterns. I've been using the Beamer on a Classic 500, the Beamer HS Plus and the Beamer YS Plus. And those are not necessarily tread patterns that you see everywhere. And then across the board on other offerings as well, you tend to see that innovation and those interesting choices being made. So my question really is, what are the fundamentals of tread pattern in that sense? And what are some of the interesting choices that you as Eurogrip have made that unlock more for a customer? Because I have noticed that difference on the Beamer. Riding those tires feel very different, very light, very, very enjoyable.
This is an interesting question, and So as I said, many research programs and R&D programs on new product development try to anchor the tread pattern. But we made an interesting choice of making it a variable.
Okay.
Right? So we said that, tread pattern has got a lot to offer in terms of optimization. Right? You have many degrees of freedom in a tread pattern. You can dissect a rectangular piece, if I have to call, or a piece of geometry into so many different arcs, lines and points, and you can blocks and curves and everything. So there are so much degrees of freedom. You need to bring in art into it.
Yes.
Right? And apply the science so that it does its job. The most important thing is it has to do its job. It's an engineering product.
Yeah.
But always you can be artistic about how you bring in that science in an artistic and a beautiful way. And that's the reason why you see those interesting patterns. It does its job extremely well, but at the same time it looks very different. And that's coming from our fundamental concept of not anchoring the tread pattern designs when we do a head size development.
That's a very interesting point. The fact that tread pattern is something that many other brands possibly anchor, and it's a variable here, and that results in products that look different, feel different, the experience is entirely different.
Yes.
One other point that came up this morning, which I found very interesting, was about the testing. You briefly mentioned this also, but the testing happening in India, in Europe, and in Japan, right? Especially with the premium category of tires, we look to European brands, we look to brands from overseas typically for their products, but there are high chances those products were not tested in India because they're made for a different market, they're made for those motorcycles, they're sort of coming here. So this was a very interesting perspective for me. So how exactly does that testing work?
One of the reasons why we decided to make our testing so exhaustive is the fundamental point that we are in a segment which is motorbikes.
Yes.
And it's very safety critical, unlike cars, right? And the conditions in different markets are very different.
Correct.
The speeds are very different, the road surfaces are very different, the weather conditions are very different. And we also know that our playing field is not India, our playing field is the entire globe.
Yes.
And hence, if I introduce a technology, be it to any market, it must be capable of performing in other markets as well.
Yes.
I can introduce a market-specific product, but I must introduce a globally acceptable technology.
Yes.
That's the goal with which we develop our technologies. So, for example, I may not have a particular product in India.
Yes.
Okay, because these markets require a different product. But you will have a technology which is available across all the markets. Like the ProTorque Extremes, which are available in India, will use a compound which is also used in Europe.
I think the ProTorque Extreme is a great example because it's also OEM on the Aprilias.
So that is possible for us is because when we look at introducing technologies, we look at it at a global scale.
Correct.
And we test them under all environments and make sure those technologies are relevant for every terrain, every weather condition, every user demands. That's how we develop the technology, and then pick those technologies and adapt it to those respective product lines. That's how we work on, and that's why it is exhaustive and it's time consuming.
So just shifting from here, sir, I think like talking about technology and all of this, it's really given us insight into what happens before the product comes to market. So now going to the consumer side, which is where all of us sit, what would you recommend? Like I'm a consumer trying to make a choice. One of the things I've noticed is that even for me myself, this thing of choosing a tire, I had a very simplistic approach to it. I've ridden extensively, but I relied on the expertise of somebody else, whether I went to a tire shop and I asked someone for their recommendation. And at that point, it didn't strike me that the reasons why they may recommend things to me could come from a lack of knowledge or other sort of motivations. So I think the best place to be is to know what you're looking for and to understand what you should be looking for as well. So having you over here, it would be great to get a few sort of pointers on what someone should be looking for when they're trying to choose a new set of tires.
Interesting and very good question. First is define who you are. When you are wanting to buy a tire, try to make an understanding of who you are and what you want your bike and the tires to do for you.
That's very true.
That's the most important thing.
Yes.
Sit back, relax, and think few minutes what exactly you use your bike and your tires for. It will give you a lot of answers.
Yes.
That's the first thing you need to do. The answers can be 90% of the time I use it on the city traffic going between my work and home, or I do this, but I do it in early shifts and hence I get free roads most of the time, so I can enjoy the ride. I can push it to the limits. This is the second answer you can get. I'm giving you options. I mean, these are the answers which somebody can get. Third is, I don't ride my bike for my daily commute, but I'm an enthusiast.
Yes.
An example. And I go on long rides, I go on windy, hilly roads, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So when you ask this question to yourself, what your tire wants to do for you, you will get those answers.
I think that's very valid, because much like the motorcycle, there's no one motorcycle that does everything.
Correct.
Your tire also needs to serve the purpose, primary
Correct.
purpose. I think that's
Correct.
key. So
Correct.
that's very true.
And when you have that answer, then you can go today our website, eurogriptires.com offers you multiple options of trying to play with your needs. Like you select the bike, what are the tire options, the features of the tire, the benefits of the tires are all there. But the most important thing is, what is that which you are looking for will form the fundamental of what is the tire choice you want to make.
While on the subject, sir, any misconceptions that you've seen people have towards this?
One of the misconceptions which I always think, I've spent all my life in this industry, is tire is something which does not need any maintenance.
Yes, this is very true.
I would urge each of the viewers that tire is the most safety critical part in your tire, in your bike. Even if the brake fails, right, you would get to know it quickly.
Yeah.
But if a tire fails, it's a slow progress and it can be disastrous when it ultimately gives up. So it is important that every now and then you keep a check on your air pressure.
Definitely. Yeah.
You keep a check on the wear on the tire, and you have a physical inspection of the tire for any untoward, what I would say, cracks or any damages which has caused because of some kind of a sharp object on the road or something like that. So 3 things. 1, look at the tires once in a while, feel them to make sure they are in perfect shape. Whenever you fill your tank, make sure you check your inflation pressure.
Your tire pressure.
Keep an eye on the tread wear of your tires. Change the tires once it reaches the tread wear indicators. Don't think that it's maintenance free.
Absolutely. So actually this is a very, very important point, because I think, actually because of brands like Eurogrip, really good tires are getting more affordable, but there is this thing of tires being a bigger expense. And so a lot of people are tempted to run it a little bit more, but the trade-off that you're making to just try to juice it a little bit more is very huge. So whether in a daily commute scenario or in a touring scenario, I think what you're saying about tire maintenance, the fact that you need to pay attention to it and take care of it and know when it's time to change and make good choices, very, very important. So that brings me to just 2 very simple questions. So these come my way all the time. I have common sense based answers for it. One is this thing about choosing tires, right? When you're changing your tires, should you change both tires, right? And if yes,
very good question. I would personally say no.
No.
Not required. at least when you are changing Eurogrip brands.
Okay.
And you have a front Eurogrip tire. The reason is when we do this, that's why that extensive and exhaustive test is all about. We make sure that even at a different front and the rear combination, you get a good performance. I won't say extreme performance, but good enough for road riding.
Yeah.
Right? This is relevant for the commute segment.
Yes.
But when it comes to high performance segments, above 300cc, 350cc, depending upon the user's need.
Yeah. The amount of performance
Performance
required
is
from the tire.
required from the tire. What are you going to? Are you going to throttle full and go high speed early in the mornings or on empty roads on big expressways, or are you going to use it on a daily commute? Do kind of use it like 10,000 kilometers in 2 years, kind of a ride, depending on that, or are you going to change it every 9 months or so? Depending on that, I would say that if you are somebody who is going to go easy on the tires, you can live with the front tire and just change the rear tire. If you're somebody who is going to push the bike to its limits, then I would recommend that you change.
Yeah, you already sort of touched on the second question, which is this thing of mix and match, right? So whether within brand or across brand, you have a different front and back.
I cannot comment about the across brand because
definitely across brand is a very challenging thing. But
I won't know the characteristics, but within the Eurogrip brand, we know that it works well.
It works, but for optimum performance, it makes sense to try and keep the same at the front and the rear. You do have offerings.
Change both together.
But
if you want to kind of be a little conservative on the spend, and it's okay to do it, but be sure.
But it's subjective.
Yeah, but be sure that, you know, again, if you are a normal user, day-to-day normal user, it's okay to just change the rear and leave the front alone. But if you are an extreme user, extreme performance-oriented user, then it is recommended to change.
Absolutely, sir. The amount of effort that goes in behind the scenes to create one of these tires that we get to use, I think what we see is just scratching at the surface. A 3-year development process, right from compound, from the basic unit to the extensive testing, to the profile, to how it works on motorcycles, the forgiving nature of a tire itself for inconsistencies that happen in day-to-day usage. So much insight in it. We've had the opportunity to meet Sir, talk to him. We've been riding with some of the expert riders who test these tires as well. Phenomenal experience. Thank you for giving me the chance to share some of it with my audience as well.
It's my pleasure.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And in fact, when I experienced the Beamer recently, I was saying I hope someday I get to try other Eurogrip tires on other motorcycles. And then this is like a dream come true. 7 motorcycles, 4 different tire products, ride it on this track. Fantastic day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Yeah.